Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel, Square Wave 2. 72 years ago, something crashed into the New Mexico desert about 75 miles away from Roswell, New Mexico. Debate and speculation, trying to figure out exactly what it was that crashed, continue to this very day. Some people believe it was the crash of a flying saucer. Some people believe that alien bodies were recovered. And some people believe it was just another one of those top secret military experiments the U.S. Army was always conducting in the New Mexico desert. At any rate, the Roswell incident is world famous. It has been the subject of countless books, many articles, and the subject of one of my favorite motion pictures simply titled Roswell. Roswell, New Mexico has become ground zero for the serious UFO researcher. Unfortunately, I'm very sorry to report that it is very easy to debunk the crashed flying saucer theory. And here's how it can be done. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that New Mexico was visited by an alien spacecraft, or a flying saucer, in 1947. Such a craft would be a remarkable achievement by our standards. And it could have traveled a very long distance from outside of our solar system, perhaps from outside of our galaxy. It could have traveled many, many light years, only to end its flight by crashing into the New Mexico desert. Such a craft would be impervious to mundane mechanical failure. Nor could such a craft have been brought down by the lightning storm that existed over Roswell at that time. Nor could such a craft collide with another spacecraft and crash into the desert. What kind of navigation would that be anyway? The remarkable intelligences, remarkable beings that created such a craft would not, could not, and did not create a craft capable of crashing into the New Mexico desert. Some of the crash material was gathered up by Rancher Mac Brazel and taken to the 509th Bombing Squadron at Roswell. The commanding officer there issued a press release stating that the Army was in possession of a flying disc, and it was made from flimsy material similar to a box kite. Now it's important to remember that this description agrees with everybody else who actually handled the material at that time. Years later, of course, the story would undergo a lot of embellishment. In fact, a complete spacecraft would appear years later. Now, how did flimsy material like a box kite survive entry into the Earth's atmosphere without burning up? Our own spacecraft have to have special heat shields when they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere because they experience temperatures up to 1600 degrees Celsius. Now, proponents of the flying saucer theory have a pat explanation for this. The ship was so advanced, it did not travel in the conventional way, the way we travel. It was able to create its own space-time warp, allowing it to arrive instantaneously anywhere in the universe. Okay, if we accept that this level of technology is possible, it becomes even more ridiculous that such a craft would crash into the New Mexico desert. It's absolutely laughable. According to one witness, who actually handled the material at the time, some of it was, quote, really weird. When you wadded it up in your hand, you couldn't feel anything was there. When you dropped it on the table, it would spread out and resume its original form, just like water. When you folded it up and let go, it would also resume its original shape. Now, what in the world could this really weird material be? Well, remember in the 1940s, the world of plastic had not become an important part of everyday life. Pieces of vinyl or mylar would appear very unearthly to most people, something they were not familiar with, hadn't seen before. And very likely what these pieces were pieces of what the Army later revealed as a top-secret balloon called Project Mogul. Now, the project itself and everything it was made out of, all the new special material, were top secret. and so the Army immediately cordoned off the area and collected all the scraps of material. Yes, there was a cover-up. It was a cover-up of a spy balloon, not the cover-up of a flying saucer. The whole Roswell incident might have been quickly forgotten if not for the efforts of Mr. Stanton Friedman, a nuclear physicist and serious UFO investigator. In 1978, Mr. Friedman happened to meet up with Jesse Marcel, who used to be the intelligence officer for the 509th. Marcel told Friedman the whole story in detail. This got Friedman so worked up and so interested that he spent the next 30 years of his life doing an in-depth investigation of the Roswell incident. He dug up every top-secret document he could lay his hands on. He interviewed every witness who was still alive, or the families of every witness that had deceased. After a 30-year search, Mr. Friedman's conclusion was, yes, something did crash at Roswell. Probably two flying saucers collided with each other. And yes, alien bodies were recovered. Now, how such a brilliant man, a nuclear physicist like Mr. Friedman, could come to this conclusion is a total mystery to me. Perhaps due to the efforts of Mr. Stanton Friedman, and many years after the fact, witnesses began falling out of the woodwork, and families of witnesses who were deceased. Everyone had a compelling story to tell. Now there were two spaceships, two flying saucers. One of them was recovered absolutely intact. Now there were alien bodies. Now there was an alien who was alive. He was walking around the crash site, clutching some kind of a box, metal box he did not want to part with. Many books, many articles were written on the Roswell incident. Many interviews were given for television and radio. Roswell just would not die. It was still a financially feasible enterprise. The most reliable information always comes from first-person eyewitness accounts, not from those that come along years later with fantastic stories, like they did in the Roswell case. The Roswell debris was handled by many people, including the soldiers that gathered it up. There has never been a reference to any substantial material that could have acted as a necessary heat shield. Everything was quite flimsy, like a box kite. So whatever crashed near Roswell did not enter the Earth's atmosphere, that's for certain. Another very untenable theory is the theory that the spaceship, or the flying saucer, could create a time warp that would allow it to arrive anywhere in the universe instantaneously. Well, it's pretty obvious that such a ship would not be brought down by a lightning strike. It would not collide with another alien spacecraft, and in short, it could not be capable of crashing in the New Mexican desert. Now, I would really love to believe that a spaceship or a flying saucer did crash near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. This would be the most exciting thing in human history. However, when we apply the light of common sense, the whole flying saucer theory goes up in smoke. What do you think?